My name is Paisley Morrison, and my parents left me at a subway station to see how brave I really was. They called it a joke, but it wasn't funny. It was a test. And the person who saved me, well, that's the part that will shock you. You see, my parents had done this before. They'd thrown away another child years ago, a child they told me was dead. But that child survived, grew up on the streets, and had been looking for me. The stranger who became my protector wasn't a stranger at all. When I finally learned the truth, everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. My name is Paisley Morrison, and I'm going to tell you about the day my parents decided to throw me away like trash. It started like any other Saturday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drawing a picture of our cat, Whiskers, when Mom came downstairs with that look on her face. You know the same look she got when she had to tell me we couldn't afford new shoes or when Dad lost another job. "Paisley, honey, get your backpack," she said, not looking at me. "We're going for a drive." I looked up from my drawing. "Where are we going?" "Just somewhere special," Dad said from the doorway. His voice sounded weird, like he was trying too hard to sound happy. "It's a surprise." I didn't like surprises, not from my parents. Their surprises usually meant something bad was about to happen. But I got my backpack anyway. I put my drawing supplies inside, along with my favorite book and a granola bar I'd been saving. Mom made me wear my good jacket, the red one with the fuzzy hood that I only wore to church or when we visited Grandma. "Why do I need my good jacket?" I asked. "Because it's cold outside," Mom said, but her hands were shaking as she zipped it up for me. The car ride was the worst part. Mom and Dad kept whispering to each other in the front seat. And every time I asked what they were talking about, they told me to look out the window or asked if I wanted to play the alphabet game. I didn't want to play any games. I wanted to know why Mom's eyes were red and why Dad's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I wanted to know why we were driving into the city, where we never went, toward the tall buildings and busy streets that made my stomach feel twisted up. "Are we going to see someone?" I asked when we stopped at a red light. Dad looked at me in the rearview mirror. "In a way," he said. What did that even mean? In a way? Parents weren't supposed to talk in riddles. They were supposed to give you straight answers and make you feel safe. I pressed my face against the window and watched the world get bigger and scarier. More cars, more people, more noise. Everything was moving so fast, and I felt so small in the back seat of our old Honda. Then we pulled into Central Metro Station. I'd never been to a subway station before. It was huge and loud and full of people who looked like they had important places to be. The smell hit me first. Coffee and exhaust and something else I couldn't name. Something that made my nose wrinkle. "Why are we here?" I asked, as we walked through the main entrance. "We're going to play a game," Mom said, but her voice cracked on the word game. A game in a subway station, with all these strangers rushing past us like we were invisible. Dad found an empty bench near the middle of the station. It was cold and metal and had gum stuck to one side. He sat me down and knelt in front of me, his big hands on my shoulders. "Here's how the game works, sweetheart," he said. "You're going to sit right here on this bench while Mom and I go get some coffee from that little shop over there." He pointed across the station to a small cafe with a green sign. "You can see us the whole time, and we can see you. But you have to stay right here no matter what happens, no matter who talks to you or what you see. You just stay put until we come back." My stomach dropped. "How long will you be gone?" "Very long," Mom said, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at her hands, twisting her wedding ring around and around her finger like she always did when she was nervous. "What if I get scared?" I asked. "You won't," Dad said. "You're braver than you think. This game is called Let's See How Brave She Really Is, and I know you're going to win." I wanted to ask more questions, but Dad was already standing up. Mom leaned down and kissed the top of my head. Her lips felt cold, and when she pulled away, I could see tears in her eyes. "We'll be right back," she whispered. Then they walked away. I sat on that bench, clutching my backpack, and watched them disappear into the crowd. The cafe Dad had pointed to was easy to spot with its green sign and the line of people waiting for coffee. I could see the door from where I sat. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. I kept watching that cafe, waiting for my parents to come out with steaming cups and apologetic smiles. But the minutes kept ticking by, and they never appeared. After an hour, I walked over to the cafe myself. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Excuse me, I said to the woman behind the counter. Did you see a man and woman come in here? They were supposed to get coffee and come back for me. She looked at me with confused eyes. Honey, I've been here all morning. No one matching that description has been in here. That's when I knew. That's when the truth hit me like a punch to the stomach. There was no game. There was no test of bravery. My parents had left me, really truly left me, and I was completely alone. The words kept repeating in my head like a broken record. Alone. Alone. I walked back to the bench like a zombie, my legs feeling like they were made of jelly. Everything around me seemed too bright, too loud, too fast. People rushed past me with their phones and briefcases and shopping bags, and not one of them looked at me. Not one of them cared that a 12-year-old girl was sitting by herself in a subway station trying not to cry. I sat down and opened my backpack with shaking hands. Maybe there was a note. Maybe Mom had slipped a piece of paper inside explaining everything. Maybe this really was some kind of test, and they'd left instructions for what I was supposed to do next. But there was nothing. Just my drawing supplies, my book, and that granola bar I'd been saving for later. The granola bar that was supposed to be a snack, not a meal, not my only meal. The first hour was the worst. I kept looking toward the entrance, expecting to see Mom and Dad come running in with worried faces and big hugs. I kept making up stories in my head about where they'd gone. Maybe they'd gotten lost. Maybe they'd been in an accident. Maybe they were looking for me right now, panicking, because they couldn't find me. But deep down, I knew the truth. The way Dad's voice had sounded when he explained the game. The way Mom couldn't look at me when she said goodbye. The way they both seemed relieved when they walked away. They weren't coming back. By the second hour, I was getting hungry. The granola bar was calling to me from my backpack, but I was scared to eat it. What if that was all the food I had? What if I needed to save it for later, when I got even hungrier? I watched people buy food from the vending machines and the little cafe. Everything cost money, and I didn't have any. I'd never needed money before. Mom and Dad always paid for everything. They always took care of me. Until now. A security guard walked by, his radio crackling with voices I couldn't understand. He was tall and wore a uniform that made him look important. For a second, I thought about running up to him and telling him everything. But then I remembered Dad's words. Let's see how brave she really is. What if this really was a test? What if my parents were somewhere nearby, watching to see if I would give up and ask for help? What if I failed the test and they decided they didn't want me anymore? The thought made my chest feel tight and my eyes burn with tears. I was trying not to cry. So I stayed on the bench. The afternoon crowd was different from the morning crowd. These people looked tired and grumpy, like they'd had long days at work and just wanted to go home, home to their families, home to their kids who were probably waiting for them with homework and stories about school. I wondered if anyone was waiting for me at home. Was Whiskers wondering where I was? Did he miss me? Or had Mom and Dad gotten rid of him too? The thought made me feel sick. As the sun started to set outside the station windows, the crowds got thicker. Rush hour, I guess. Everyone was in a hurry to get somewhere else, to get to their real lives, their real families. I felt invisible sitting on that bench, like I was a ghost that nobody could see. That's when I saw her. A woman about Mom's age was standing near the ticket machines with her little boy. He looked like he was maybe 6 or 7, with messy brown hair and a superhero backpack. The woman was digging through her purse, looking frustrated. Mommy, I'm tired, the little boy said, tugging on her coat. I know, sweetie. Just give me a minute to find our train tickets. The boy looked around the station with wide eyes, taking in all the people and noise. His gaze landed on me, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he smiled and waved. I waved back, and it was the first time I'd smiled all day. Mommy, why is that girl sitting all by herself? The boy asked, pointing at me. The woman looked up from her purse and followed her son's gaze. When she saw me, her face changed. She got that same worried look that grown-ups get when they see something that doesn't seem right. She started walking toward me, her son's hand in hers, and my heart started beating faster. What was I supposed to say? How was I supposed to explain that my parents had left me here on purpose? Excuse me, sweetie, the woman said when she reached my bench. Are you here by yourself? I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. All the emotions I'd been holding back all day came rushing up at once. The fear, the anger, the confusion, the hurt. It all came pouring out in big, ugly sobs that echoed through the station. The woman sat down next to me without asking permission. She didn't try to hug me or tell me everything would be okay. She just sat there and let me cry. "It's all right," she said softly. "Whatever happened, we'll figure it out." But I knew she was wrong. Some things couldn't be figured out. Some things couldn't be fixed. Some things, like parents who throw their children away, were broken forever. When I finally stopped crying, I looked up at the woman through my tears. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile. And for just a moment, I let myself pretend she was my mom. My real mom, who would never leave me alone in a scary place. "What's your name, honey?" she asked. "Paisley," I whispered. "I'm Sarah, and this is my son, Jake. Can you tell me what happened? Where are your parents?" I took a shaky breath and told her everything. About the car ride, about the game, about sitting on this bench for hours waiting for parents who were never coming back. Sarah listened without interrupting, her face getting more and more concerned with each word. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. "I need to call someone," she said. "Someone who can help you." "No," I said, grabbing her arm. "Please don't call anyone. Not yet. I need to think." Sarah looked at me with those kind eyes, and I could see her wrestling with what to do. She wanted to help, but she also wanted to respect what I was asking for. "Okay," she said finally, "but not for long. You can't stay here all night, Paisley. It's not safe." Night? I hadn't even thought about night, about what would happen when the station emptied out and the lights dimmed and I was truly alone in the dark. Sarah and Jake stayed with me for another hour. Jake shared his animal crackers with me, and Sarah bought me a hot chocolate from the vending machine. For a little while, I felt almost normal, almost like I belonged somewhere. But eventually, they had to go. They had their own lives, their own home to get to. "I'll be back tomorrow," Sarah promised, as she hugged me goodbye. "First thing in the morning, and if you change your mind about calling for help, here's my number." She pressed a piece of paper into my hand. Then they were gone, and I was alone again. The station was emptying out as the evening got later. The rush hour crowds had gone home to their families, leaving behind only the night shift workers and a few scattered travelers. The bright fluorescent lights seemed harsher now, casting weird shadows in the corners. I curled up on the bench, using my backpack as a pillow. The metal was cold against my cheek, and every sound echoed in the mostly empty space. The rumble of distant trains, the squeak of a janitor's cart, the drip of water from a leaky pipe somewhere. I closed my eyes and tried to pretend I was at home in my own bed, with Whiskers curled up beside me, and the familiar sounds of Mom and Dad watching TV downstairs. But the illusion wouldn't stick. The bench was too hard, the air too cold, the loneliness too heavy. That's when I heard footsteps approaching. Slow, careful footsteps that stopped right in front of my bench. I opened my eyes and saw a figure standing in the shadows, watching me. My heart started racing. Who was it? What did they want? And then they stepped into the light. And I saw a face that would change everything. It was a person who looked like they could be anywhere from 16 to 25. It was hard to tell in the harsh fluorescent lighting. They had short, messy, dark hair that looked like it had been cut with scissors in a bathroom mirror, and they wore a faded denim jacket that was too big for their thin frame. But it was their eyes that caught my attention. They were dark and serious, but there was something gentle in them too, something that made me feel less scared. "Hey," they said softly, not moving any closer. "You okay?" I sat up on the bench, clutching my backpack against my chest like a shield. "I'm fine," I lied. They tilted their head, studying me with those careful eyes. "You've been here a while." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "How do you know?" "I've been watching." They gestured toward a bench across the station. Not in a creepy way, they added quickly when they saw my expression. "Just keeping an eye out. This isn't exactly the safest place for a kid to be alone."
A kid.
They called me a kid, which meant they were older than me. But not by much, I didn't think. "I'm not alone," I said, even though it was obviously a lie. "My parents are..." I stopped, realizing I didn't know how to finish that sentence. "Gone," they said simply. Yeah, I figured. The word hit me like a punch to the stomach. Gone. Such a small word for such a big thing. I'm River, they said, taking a step closer but still keeping their distance. What's your name? Paisley. That's a pretty name. River smiled, and it changed their whole face, made them look younger, softer. You hungry, Paisley? I was starving, but I'd been taught never to take food from strangers. River seemed to understand my hesitation. I get it, they said. Smart thinking. Tell you what, there's a vending machine over there. You pick what you want, and I'll pay for it. That way you know it's safe. It was such a simple offer, but it broke something loose inside me. All day, people had rushed past me like I was invisible. The only person who'd shown me any kindness was Sarah, and she was gone now. But here was this stranger offering to buy me food, asking for nothing in return. Why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. River was quiet for a moment, looking at something far away. Because I know what it's like, they said finally, to be left behind. There was pain in their voice, old pain that had been carried for a long time. I recognized it because I was carrying the same pain now. Okay, I said. River smiled again and walked over to the vending machine. I followed, my legs shaky from sitting on the hard bench for so long. The machine was full of chips and candy bars and crackers, things I wasn't usually allowed to have for dinner. But this wasn't usual, was it? What sounds good? River asked, pulling crumpled bills from their jacket pocket. I pressed my face against the glass, looking at all the options. Everything looked amazing. I don't know. I've never picked my own dinner before. River raised an eyebrow. Really? How old are you? 12. 12 and you've never picked your own dinner? River shook their head. That's messed up. It had never seemed messed up before. It had just been normal. Mom always made dinner, and I ate what she put in front of me. Sometimes I got to choose between two options, but never anything like this. How about we get a few different things? River suggested, make it a feast. We ended up with a bag of chips, some crackers, 2 candy bars, and a bottle of water. River paid for everything without complaining, even though I could tell money was tight for them. Their clothes were worn and patched, and they counted the bills carefully before feeding them into the machine. We went back to my bench. It felt like my bench now, after spending the whole day on it. River sat at the other end, leaving plenty of space between us. So, River said, opening the bag of chips and setting it between us. Want to tell me what happened? I did. I told them about the car ride, about the fake game, about sitting here for hours waiting for parents who were never coming back. River listened without interrupting, their face getting darker with each detail. That's really messed up, River said when I finished. Parents aren't supposed to do that to their kids. Maybe they're testing me, I said, even though I didn't really believe it anymore. Maybe they want to see if I'm brave enough. River's expression softened. Paisley, listen to me, this isn't about being brave. This isn't your fault. Parents who love their kids don't abandon them at subway stations. Ever. The words hit me like a slap. I'd been trying so hard to believe that this was some kind of test, some way for me to prove myself. But River was right. Real parents didn't do this. Then why? I asked, my voice cracking. Why did they leave me? I don't know, River said honestly. But it's not because you're not good enough. It's because something's wrong with them. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, sharing the chips and crackers. River didn't try to fill the quiet with meaningless chatter or false promises that everything would be okay. They just sat with me, a solid presence in the chaos of my world falling apart. How long have you been on your own? I asked, eventually. River was quiet for so long. I thought they weren't going to answer. A few years, they said finally. Since I was 15. What happened to your parents? Another long pause. They decided they didn't want me anymore, said I was too much trouble. There was a story there, a big one, but I could tell River didn't want to talk about it. I understood. Some hurts were too deep to share with someone you just met. Where do you sleep? I asked instead. River shrugged. Different places. Shelters sometimes, when they have room. Other places when they don't. Is it scary? Sometimes. But you learn to be careful. You learn to spot the dangerous people and the safe places. River looked at me seriously. You learn to survive. Survive. The word sounded so grown up, so final. Like something from a movie or a book, not something that happened to real kids like me. I don't know how to survive, I admitted. You're tougher than you think, River said. You've made it this far, haven't you? Most kids would have given up by now. I didn't feel tough. I felt small and scared and very, very alone. But River seemed to see something in me that I couldn't see in myself. What do I do now? I asked. River was quiet for a moment, thinking, well, you've got a few options. You could go to the police, tell them what happened. They'd probably put you in foster care or something. What's foster care like? Hit or miss. Sometimes you get lucky and find good people. Sometimes. River trailed off, shaking their head. Sometimes you don't. That didn't sound very reassuring. What else? I asked. You could try to make it on your own, like I did. It's hard, but it's possible. You just have to be smart about it. Would you help me? River looked surprised by the question. Help you? I don't know anything about living on the streets. I don't know where to sleep or how to find food or how to stay safe. But you do. You could teach me. River stared at me for a long moment, and I couldn't tell what they were thinking. Finally, they nodded slowly. Okay, they said, but just for a little while. Just until you figure out what you really want to do. Relief flooded through me. I wouldn't have to face this alone. I'd have someone to help me. Someone who understood what it was like to be thrown away by the people who were supposed to love you. Thank you, I whispered. River smiled that soft smile again. Don't thank me yet. This isn't going to be easy. But as I looked at River, my new friend, my protector, my fellow survivor, I felt something I hadn't felt all day. Hope. Maybe I couldn't go home. Maybe my parents really were gone forever. But I wasn't alone anymore. And sometimes that was enough. The next few days became a blur of learning things I never thought I'd need to know. River became my teacher in a school I never wanted to attend. The School of Surviving on the Streets. First rule, River said on my second morning at the station, never stay in one place too long. Security guards notice patterns, and you don't want to become a problem they feel like they need to solve. We moved constantly during the day, from the subway station to the public library, where we could use the bathrooms and pretend to read books while staying warm. From the library to the park, where River showed me which trash cans behind the deli might have day-old sandwiches that were still good. Don't eat anything that smells funny or looks moldy. River warned as I examined a half-eaten turkey sandwich. And always check the expiration dates on packaged stuff. Getting sick out here isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. I never thought I'd be eating from garbage cans. A week ago, if someone had told me I'd be grateful for a stale bagel with only one bite taken out of it, I would have laughed. But hunger changes things. Hunger makes you practical in ways you never expected. River taught me other things too. How to spot the difference between security guards who would help and ones who would just make trouble. How to find clean water fountains and public bathrooms that didn't lock at night. How to make yourself invisible when you needed to disappear. The trick is to look like you belong, River explained, as we sat in a 24-hour diner, nursing cups of coffee that River had paid for with change scrounged from fountain coins. If you act nervous or suspicious, people notice. But if you act like you're supposed to be somewhere, most people won't look twice. How do you know all this stuff? I asked. River stirred their coffee slowly, not meeting my eyes. You learn fast when you have to, when the choice is learn or starve. There was pain in their voice, the same pain I'd heard that first night. I was starting to understand that River carried their own story of abandonment, their own reasons for knowing how to survive alone. But they never talked about it directly, and I didn't push. Some stories were too hard to tell, and some wounds were too deep to share with someone you'd only known a few days. But River was teaching me more than just survival skills. They were teaching me about strength I didn't know I had. You walked 12 blocks today without complaining once, River said on our third day together as we settled into our spot under a highway overpass for the night. Most kids your age would be crying for their mommy by now. I did cry for my mommy, I pointed out. On the first day, a lot. Yeah, but then you stopped. You picked yourself up and kept going. That takes guts, Paisley. I didn't feel brave. I felt scared and tired and sad. But River seemed to see something in me that I couldn't see in myself. They treated me like I was capable of more than I thought possible. And somehow that made me actually become more capable. River also taught me about kindness in unexpected places. Like Mrs. Chen, the old woman who ran the laundromat where we sometimes went to get warm. She never said much, but she always made sure to leave half a sandwich accidentally on the counter where we could reach it. Or Marcus, the homeless veteran who slept behind the library and always shared his information about which shelters had space and which soup kitchens were serving meals. People help each other out here, River explained. We have to. Nobody else is going to do it for us. It was like a secret community of people who had been forgotten by the rest of the world. They looked out for each other in small ways, sharing food, sharing information, sharing the warmth of not being completely alone. But it wasn't always safe. River made sure I understood that. See that guy over there? River nodded toward a man in a dirty coat who was watching us from across the park. He's been following us for the last 2 blocks. When I say run, you run, okay? My heart started beating faster. What does he want? Nothing good. Some people see kids on their own and think they're easy targets. River's voice was calm, but I could see the tension in their shoulders. Ready? We ran. Through the park, down 3 blocks, and into the maze of alleys behind the shopping district. River knew every shortcut, every hiding place. We lost the man quickly, but the experience left me shaking. Is it always like this? I asked when we finally stopped to catch our breath. Not always, but you have to stay alert. You have to trust your instincts. River looked at me seriously. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't ignore that feeling. Despite the scary moments, I was learning to navigate this new world. I was getting stronger, tougher, more confident. River was right. I was braver than I thought. But I was also getting angrier. The anger came in waves, usually when I least expected it. Like when we passed a family in the park, parents pushing their little girl on the swings while she laughed and called, "Higher, higher." The dad was smiling, the mom was taking pictures, and they all looked so happy together. That's when the rage would hit me like a lightning bolt. Why did that little girl get to have parents who loved her while I got thrown away like trash? What made her special? What made me so worthless? It's not fair, I said to River one afternoon, as we watched the happy family pack up their picnic and head home together. No, River agreed. It's not. I hate them, I said, surprised by the venom in my own voice. I hate my parents for doing this to me. River was quiet for a long moment. That's okay, they said finally. Anger is normal. Anger means you know you deserved better. Do you hate your parents? River's jaw tightened. Sometimes. Other times I just feel sorry for them. They're missing out on knowing who I really am. There was something in the way River said it that made me think there was more to their story than just being too much trouble. But before I could ask, River's phone buzzed with a notification. He looked at the screen, and their face went completely white. What is it? I asked. River showed me the phone. It was a news alert. Police searching for missing 12-year-old girl. Below the headline was a picture of me, my school picture from last year, with my hair in neat braids and my biggest smile. They reported you missing, River said. But they didn't sound relieved. They sounded worried. Isn't that good? Doesn't that mean they want me back? River looked at me with sad eyes. Paisley, if they wanted you back, why did they wait 4 days to report you missing? The question hit me like a slap. 4 days. I'd been gone for 4 days. And they were just now telling the police? Maybe they were looking for me themselves first, I said. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Or maybe, River said gently, they needed time to come up with a story that makes them look like victims instead of the people who abandoned their daughter. The words hung in the air between us like poison. I knew River was right, but I didn't want to believe it. Some part of me still hoped that my parents loved me, that they missed me, that they wanted me to come home. But 4 days of not knowing where their child was, and they hadn't called the police. That told me everything I needed to know. We need to be more careful now. River said, putting their phone away. The police will be looking for you. Your picture is probably everywhere. What do we do? River was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then their expression hardened with determination. We keep going, we keep surviving, and we don't let them win. But as we gathered our things and prepared to find a new place to spend the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The missing person report felt like the beginning of something, not the end. And I had no idea how right I was. The confrontation happened 3 days later, behind the public library where River and I had been spending our afternoons. We'd gotten comfortable there, maybe too comfortable. The librarians knew us by sight now and didn't bother us as long as we were quiet. Mrs. Tatterson, the children's librarian, had even started leaving books she thought I'd like on the table where we usually sat. I was reading one of those books, a story about a girl who discovered she had magical powers, when River suddenly grabbed my arm. We need to go, they whispered urgently. Now. I looked up to see what had spooked them, and my heart stopped. There, walking through the library's main entrance, were my parents. Mom was wearing her good coat, the navy blue one she only wore to important occasions. Dad was in his best suit, the one from job interviews. They looked like responsible, worried parents searching for their missing child. But I knew better now. I knew what they really were. Back exit, River said, pulling me toward the rear of the library. But we were too late. Dad had spotted us. Paisley, he called out, his voice carrying across the quiet library. Paisley, there you are. People turned to look. The librarians stopped what they were doing. Everyone was staring at us as my parents hurried over, their faces masks of relief and concern. Oh, sweetheart, Mom said, reaching for me. We've been so worried about you. I stepped back, bumping into River. No, you haven't. Of course we have, Dad said, but his eyes were cold. We've been looking everywhere for you. We even called the police. 4 days later, River said quietly, but loud enough for the people around us to hear. Dad's jaw tightened. Who are you? He demanded, looking at River with disgust. What have you done with our daughter? I kept her safe, River replied, their voice steady despite the tremor I could feel in their hands. Something you clearly had no interest in doing. You don't know what you're talking about, Mom said, but her voice was shaky. This was all a misunderstanding. Paisley, honey, we can explain everything. Explain what? I asked, surprised by how strong my voice sounded. Explain how you left me at a subway station? Explain how you lied to me about playing a game. Explain how you drove away and never came back. The people around us were definitely listening now. I could see the librarians whispering to each other, their faces troubled. A few other patrons had stopped pretending to read and were openly staring. You're causing a scene, Dad said through gritted teeth. We need to discuss this at home. I'm not going home with you, I said. I'm staying with River. You're 12 years old, Mom said, her mask of concern slipping. You don't get to make that choice. Watch me. That's when River did something I didn't expect. They pulled out their phone and held it up so my parents could see the screen. Actually, River said, their voice carrying a strange note I'd never heard before. She does get to make that choice, because I've been recording this entire conversation. Dad's face went red. You can't do that. That's illegal. No, it's not. This is a public place, and I'm a minor recording adults who abandoned a child. I've got everything we need to prove what you did to her. We didn't abandon her, Mom said quickly. It was a test. We wanted to see if she could. If she could what? River interrupted. If she could survive being thrown away like garbage. If she could handle being homeless and hungry and scared. What kind of parents test their child like that? The questions hung in the air like accusations. Around us, the library had gone completely silent. Everyone was listening to this family drama play out in front of them. The kind of parents who don't want to make the same mistake twice, Dad said, and there was something in his voice that made my blood run cold. River went very still. What did you say? I said we didn't want to make the same mistake twice. We learned from our first failure. First failure? I asked, confused. What are you talking about? But River wasn't looking at me. They were staring at my parents with an expression I'd never seen before. A mixture of rage and pain and something that looked almost like recognition. Tell her, River said, their voice barely above a whisper. Tell her about your first child. Mom made a strangled sound. Dad's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about, Dad said, but his voice was shaking. Yes, you do. River took a step closer to my parents. Tell her about the child you gave up when they were 3 years old. Tell her about the kid you abandoned, because they were too difficult to handle. My mind was reeling. Another child? My parents had another child? That's impossible, I said. I don't have any brothers or sisters. Yes, you do, River said. And when they looked at me, their eyes were full of tears. You have a brother, had a brother. One who was thrown away just like you were, except he was too young to understand why. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture so impossible and horrible that I couldn't breathe. River's knowledge of the system, their understanding of abandonment, the way they'd known exactly how to survive on the streets, the pain in their voice when they talked about parents who didn't want them. No, I whispered. No, that's not possible. River pulled out their phone again and showed me something on the screen. It was a birth certificate. Riley Morrison, born 15 years ago. Parents Marcus Morrison and Diana Morrison. Riley. River was Riley. My brother who I'd been told was dead. You told me he died, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You said he got sick and died when I was a baby. He was dead to us, Dad said, his voice hard as stone. We made that choice a long time ago. Because he was different, River Riley said. Because when he was 3 years old, he told you he was a boy and you couldn't handle having a transgender child. The words hit me like a physical blow. Transgender. My brother was transgender and my parents had thrown him away for it. You gave him up because he was transgender? I asked, my voice rising. You abandoned a 3-year-old because he knew who he was. We gave him up because he was confused and disruptive and we couldn't handle the problems he would cause, Mom said. But her voice was defensive now. We were young, we didn't know what to do. So you threw him away, I said, the anger building in my chest like a fire. And then you lied to me about it for my entire life. We did what we thought was best, Dad said. For who? Riley demanded. For him, for her, or for yourselves? The library was completely silent now. Even the air conditioning seemed to have stopped humming. Everyone was watching this family destroy itself in front of them. And now, Riley continued, their voice growing stronger. You've done the same thing to her. You threw her away to see if she would survive, just like you threw me away. The only difference is she's old enough to understand what you did. Why? I asked, tears streaming down my face. Why did you leave me at the subway station? Why did you lie about the game? Mom and Dad looked at each other, and I saw something pass between them. Some silent communication about whether to tell the truth or keep lying. Finally, Dad spoke. Because we wanted to know if you were going to be like him, he said, nodding toward Riley. We wanted to know if you were going to be another problem child, or if you were going to be normal. The words hit me like a slap. Another problem child. They thought being transgender was a problem. They thought my brother was defective. And if I wasn't strong enough, I asked, if I couldn't survive on my own, what then? Dad's silence was all the answer I needed. You're monsters, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You're both monsters. We're your parents, Mom said. We love you. No, you don't, Riley said. You don't love either of us. You love the idea of perfect children who never challenge you or make you uncomfortable. But real love doesn't come with conditions. Riley stepped forward, putting themselves between me and my parents. She's not going with you, they said. And you're not going to hurt her the way you hurt me. You can't stop us, Dad said. She's our daughter. Actually, I can. Riley held up their phone again. Because I've recorded this entire conversation. Child abandonment is a felony. So is child endangerment. The police are going to be very interested in hearing about your little test. In the distance, I could hear sirens getting closer. Riley must have called the police while my parents were talking. This isn't over, Dad said, as the police cars pulled up outside the library. Yes, it is, Riley replied. It's been over for a long time. You just didn't want to accept it. As the police officers came through the library doors and my parents were led away in handcuffs, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a week. Hope. Not because the nightmare was over, but because I finally understood that I wasn't alone. I had a brother who had survived everything our parents had thrown at him, who had found me when I needed him most, who had never stopped being my family even when our parents had erased him from our lives. What happens now? I asked Riley, as we watched our parents disappear into the back of a police car. Now we build a new life, they said, putting their arm around my shoulders. Together, the way it should have been from the beginning. For the first time in over a week, I smiled. Not because everything was okay, it wasn't, and it wouldn't be for a long time, but because I had something I'd never had before, a real family, a brother who loved me unconditionally, who had fought to protect me, who would never leave me behind. We were survivors, we were siblings, and we were finally truly free. Paisley and Riley's story shows us that real family isn't about blood. It's about love, support, and never giving up on each other. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us fail, but there's always hope for finding those who truly care. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and tell me your city or country. It's amazing to connect with people from all around the world. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. By sharing these stories, we spread kindness and remind everyone that they're not alone in their struggles. And don't forget to click on the video appearing on your screen right now for another incredible story that will inspire you. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are stronger than you think, and you deserve love and kindness always. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.